Hello. Oh, we've got... Is that better? There we go. No echo, no echo, no echo. Welcome to another Healthy Gamer GG stream, chat. My name is Dr. Alok Kanoja. Just a reminder that although I'm a psychiatrist, nothing we discuss on stream today is intended to be taken as medical advice. Everything is for educational or entertainment purposes only. Oh my God. If y'all have a medical question or concern, please go see a licensed professional. Yeah, so welcome to Mental Health Awareness Month, chat. It's nice to see everyone today. We try to do a lot of stuff for Mental Health Awareness Month. So we're going to be sharing a lot of these things with y'all today. Give me just 1 second. Let me get some of this stuff. Okay. Okay, there we go. All right, so now I've got chat open. Pop out chat. Let's do that. Then I don't need to see my own back to chat. Can I pop out chat over here? Nope. Okay, whatever. This is good enough. So, welcome everybody. How y'all doing today? How's everybody doing? Yeah, so welcome to Mental Health Awareness Month. It is the month that we work for the hardest all year long. So this is our, this is what we try to do for y'all. So we're going to be talking about male insecurities today. But we've also got some stuff coming out for women. There's actually an event today in the women's space, which we'll be talking about in a second. And then we've got hopefully a video about women and ADHD coming out soon. But today we're going to be focusing on male insecurities, and we'll also be launching a new resource pack for male mental health. So if y'all are interested in that kind of stuff, please check it out. But before we get into all of that stuff, let's talk about the month. So we have a cool event coming up. So make it May. All right, so let's take a look at, there we go. Okay, so if we look at, oh, interesting. Hold on a second, chat. Technical difficulties. There. Does that work now? Okay, weird. Okay, well, it works. There we go. So, we have a month-long event, which is designed to trick y'all into doing things that are good for you. That is our goal. So, Make It May is all about doing stuff. We'll get to what that stuff is. And we will accumulate points. This is a co-op endeavor, right? So, we're taking our inspiration from Helldivers 2. So, if we get 500,000 points, we get a special community role or color for 2024. At 750K, Kruti gives me a performance review. If we hit 1 million views, so these are our stretch goals, okay? 1 million views is I will do a pickup artist review stream. Okay, so we will have Dr. K's take on pickup artists. At 125, we're going to get 1.25. Kruti will offer her own commentary on pickup artists. And if we get to 1.5 million, which is probably out of the realm of possibility, but we'll see, it's a stretch goal. We've done it before, chat. We may have a special guest return on stream, which is much beloved by a slice of our community and much confusing to the rest of the people, especially if you're new here. So Sarasaras One Mango Prasad, Dr. K Guru may show up. So the purpose of the event is week 1, we're starting with Make a Plan. So this is a week that we're going to help y'all make concrete plans, set goals, and work on time management. Week 2 is going to be about making connections. So this is going to focus on building healthy relationships, communities, and networks. Week 3 is Make Your Mark. So this is about creative skills and self-expression. And week 4 is Make a Difference. This focuses on skills and passions, utilizing your skills and passions to make positive, actual change in the lives of others. So the goal of this is we're going to do all the stuff that we should be doing, right? And we're going to do it together. And we're going to make it fun. And we're going to reward y'all if you set goals and achieve them. Work on time management, make connections, form relationships. Let's solve this loneliness epidemic. Focus on creative skills and self-expression, and then make the world a better place. Okay? So Participants will be given points for attending certain events and completing certain tasks. Points are based on the assumed effort and time commitment, so there is something of the honor system at play here. And then there's going to be some collaborative activities that come in at week 3 that have an XP bonus. And then we'll be asking people to upload pics. You don't have to include your face or anything like that. So this will, I assume, be like, what was it? Touch grass, right? So it's like you're going to take pictures of like fruit and stuff like that. Okay. Another thing is, so this is kind of a quick summary, right? So this is make a plan, make connections, make difference, make stuff, make a difference. So it's going to be like at the end of the month, we want y'all to be like happy with where you are, right? We've made positive impact in our lives and we're going to be like doing fun stuff. We also have let's see if this is live yet. Okay. So we have a new mental health resource pack on male mental health. So for those of y'all that aren't too familiar with this stuff, we do a lot of stuff here at HG, and all of it is for you. So we have like random streams like this, right? Which is lots of fun because we get to talk to y'all. And we get to hear what y'all say. How do we join in? There's a Discord link. And I think people in chat, yeah, I sometimes read chat, but now that we're dual streaming, I can't read all of the chat all the time. Link in chat. Yeah, let me give you all a link in chat. So here's the event. Let me see if I can. Okay, there's the link in chat. All right. So, yeah. Yeah, so we've got a couple of different things, right? So we make, so a couple of things is that there are going to be some winners, right? So we're all going to win together. Everybody gets prizes. But I think the top 5 people will get full access to all of Dr. K's guides to mental health. So it's guide to depression, guide to anxiety, guide to meditation, guide to ADHD and doing stuff, and our new trauma module, which will be coming out soon. Super excited about the trauma module, which is brand new. I think it's something that has been many years in the making. It's literally taken us about 18 months to 2 years. But in my mind, it's been many years in the making. So we're super excited about that. And y'all will get access to all of the guides, including the new one, if you're one of the top 5 winners. And then everybody else gets all of the goals that we share with everybody. We recognize that some of y'all are not in the best financial place because Dr. K's guide does cost money. It's generally speaking quite cheap, and generally speaking, we consistently hear that it offers some of the best value that you can get out there. And so we still recognize that there are many people who are either from developing countries or have access to currency that doesn't convert well to the dollar, or y'all are just on the struggle bus in life, which is fair enough. That's why we do a lot of free streams and educational content and upload things and lectures and stuff like that. And resource packs are a big part of that. So resource packs is something that we launched about a year ago. And these are more sequential approaches to a topic. And we're starting one on male mental health. So it collects a lot of resources that we have, offers some exercises, some reflections, things like that. So some application stuff focused on male mental health. Okay. Let's see what else is going on. Did I get to everything? Okay, so let me just show y'all in more detail what a resource pack looks like. So, rel quack. Is this working out? Okay, cool. All right, so let's see. So this is like, so these are curated videos about a lot of things that relate to male mental health. And then there will also be like insights and reflections. So if we look at the way that you learn things, right? So if we look at the science of learning. So a lot of people wonder like, okay, I watch stuff on YouTube all day. Does that actually help? So it helps some. We have some evidence that it helps some. And some people will say like, oh, this video like really changed things for me. Everything clicked when I watched this. So that's absolutely there. But we also try to use a lot of evidence-based techniques in terms of enhancing understanding. And what we know is that reinforcement and manipulation of information lead to more retention and more behavioral change. So we have 45 insights to summarize key learnings, and then there are reflections that you can go through. that will help you like manipulate the information, right? So I don't know if this kind of makes sense, but like if we look at just the science of learning. So if I ask someone, you know, what is 2 + 2, you can memorize the answer, but that's not what leads to learning. Learning is manipulation of information. So we invite y'all to reflect on things, play around with the concepts that we teach, and the science suggests, we haven't studied this like with an IRB approved trial or anything like that internally in the community. We probably will at some point. But what we know is that when you add these additional layers, it enhances your understanding. So for people who enjoy watching the YouTube videos, what we've tried to do is offer maybe just a 10% bump in effort, right? So there's like let's say a 2-hour, it looks like the first one is on male suicide. So we're going to talk about that. And then there are a couple of exercises and key learnings that we can use for reinforcement and manipulation of information. Okay, so someone is saying that is not for India, we cannot buy it. That's weird. News to me. Is there a women's mental health resource pack as well yet, or is it perhaps coming later? It is undoubtedly coming later. So one of the challenges that we have about making content for women, which we're working on, is just that I don't have the benefit of lived experience. So what that means is that every video that I make for a woman leans a lot on my clinical experience. So in my clinical practice, I've worked with about 50-50 men, women. I've worked with hundreds of women. So I do feel qualified to talk about those things. But there's an additional layer of, how can I say this? I feel like the bar is higher, right? So we have to be extra careful just because I don't have the lived experience of a woman. So that means that oftentimes there's an additional layer of research, there's an additional layer of verification, which is fine. It's not, we don't mind doing it. It's great. But we want to just make sure that our content is like high quality and is like quite representative of the experiences of women. And so there's just an additional layer that comes with that, which is totally cool. Like that's part of what we do. That's part of the reason that we also have a women's only space on Discord. And then we've got a couple of other things in the works for the women in our community. All right. So, and by the way, most of what we make, like I'd say like 90% of what we make is not gender specific. So today, for example, while we're like talking about male insecurity, there's actually the only lecture that I prepared today is about insecurity for all people. So how do we overcome insecurity? Understanding the nuts and bolts of the concept. And so even, you know, let me think, 9 years ago was the first time that someone called me woke. And I didn't know what the term meant. So one of my supervisors was like, wow, you're like quite woke. And I was like, I don't know what that means. And they were like, then they explained it to me. And I was like, and the reason they called me woke is because I was working with a patient who had some problems with their gender identity. It's not that they were trans or something like that. They had a certain perception of masculinity or femininity that they weren't living up to. And then I was trying to explain to them that like, oh, you know, if you look at the meditative tradition, like at the end of it, we're all just human. So we're all like a spark of the divine, and that even this construct of gender is like a part of our ego, and the ego is not truly what we are. There's a true self that transcends ethnicity and gender and any kind of identity, tall, short, whatever. And so at our true oneness, right, there's actually no gender. And if you look at experiences in meditation, if we look at experiences of samadhi or transcendent meditation, usually there's no gender identity associated with that, right? So you're just like one with existence. And so even your whole individual, gender goes with it, but the whole identity, all the parts of your identity disappear in transcendent states of meditation. And so apparently that was considered woke, right? So I'm not saying I'm woke. I'm not saying I'm not woke. Anyway, so what we try to teach is towards that, right? That there are certain fundamental things that make us human, and leaning into like those aspects of our psychology and those aspects of our brain, of our mind, of our bodies, like what makes us fundamentally human is what we lean into. The flip side of that is that people have unique gendered experiences, and so we try to honor those as well. And today, speaking of it, we're going to talk about male-specific insecurities, okay? But our lecture will apply to everyone because the stream is not just for men. Okay. Shall we get started, chat? Shall we do this? Okay. All right. Let's get started. Chat lords. Chat lords and chat ladies. Okay. A short word about balding. Nope. Why does it go over here? Okay. My observations as a 28-year-old man. Increasingly over the past year, posts on this sub have been addressed the interaction between going bald and attitudes towards mental health. A lot of people on this sub are really suffering from varying degrees of depression, body dysmorphia, and anxiety, both general and social. Okay? This post is what I've observed since going bald after having long hair for most of my life, and I hope that some people can derive some value from it. The process of watching myself lose my hair was awful. I felt like I was robbed of my visual identity, and I became stuck with this appearance that wasn't considered attractive by most people. As well as the feeling of not looking like myself, I also had to contend with my perception that women found me less attractive. There's definitely a feeling of isolation that comes with balding. It happens to enough people, mostly men, and there really isn't any sympathy that comes with losing your hair. It isn't a serious or debilitating illness on its own, and there are people with rare genetic illnesses and disabilities who have it a lot worse than people losing their hair. We all know that. Sometimes I feel guilty or shallow for obsessing over this one aspect of my life. At the same time, balding happens to people infrequently enough where it's still a notable characteristic. It's considered funny and fair game to ridicule people for being bald, despite it fundamentally being body shaming. Balding is often unfairly aligned with being unhealthy, unhygienic, or less virile. There's also a huge emphasis on physical appearance in today's media and society in general. For people who already considered themselves somewhat attractive, balding is for the most part a loss of their potential beauty. Think about how you could have looked if you still had hair. Is something I find myself saying almost every morning. For people who never found themselves attractive, balding is just another nail in the coffin and another way in which poor luck has lessened their social standing and the ability to attract others to them. Some posts on here read like they belong on incel forums, particularly because balding is a mostly male-centric problem, and a lot of men worry about their chances attracting women or talk about ways in which they have been shamed or rejected for this aspect of their appearance that is largely out of their control. It puts men in a tough spot. You can't blame women for not being attracted to you, but it's a constant and often fruitless struggle if you want to change the way that you look. It can be frustrating at the very least. All of this, the social shame, lack of sympathetic support, the feeling of being unattractive, the jealousy of people with hair, uncertainty that you will find a romantic or sexual partner, the dissonance between how you feel you should look and what you see in the mirror. No wonder people battle with mental illness. I'm in a better place mentally now than when I first cut my hair off. I've spent more time getting used to my own appearance, and I've worked on myself in the gym, and I'm very lucky to have a supportive partner. It still hurts whenever people mention my hair. I find it difficult to look at old photos of myself with hair. I don't feel as confident in my appearance. I catch people glancing at my hairline in conversation, and jokes or comments about my hair is enough to ruin an afternoon. I'm pretty insecure, and no amount of just get over it from online forums has changed that. I'm still here on this sub and still on treatments for hair loss. If there's a chance I can get back some of what I've lost, I'm taking it. We should feel responsible on this subreddit to ensure that people are doing right by themselves. Mental health should absolutely be a part of the treatment of baldness and something that we can't shy away from on this forum. So I think this is a beautiful description of what it's like to go bald. And I know that we're talking about men today because it's a very common experience of men, but there's plenty of evidence that shows that baldness in women is even more debilitating than it is in men. And women go bald too, by the way. So let's take a quick listen. Before we kind of dive in, let's take a quick listen to one of the most wise people on the internet, Thor. pirate software.
Let me explain something. Everybody loves when you have hair. Everybody loves when you're bald. They just don't like when you're balding. It's that middle ground, that uncanny valley of the head that causes a problem. Picard, sexy as shit. 100%. Bald, right? Doesn't matter. David Bowie, hair, awesome, sexy as shit. It's just balding that's the issue. No one wants balding. They want bald or they want hair. Go either direction. Just don't sit in the middle. It's not good.
Okay. So, let's talk about balding. So today, if you are struggling with balding, we're going to help you. We're going to help you by showing you a road forward. So the first thing that I'm going to say is that I have been working on this for about 3 years. So for 3 years, every 6 months or so, I will sit down and I will look at all of the scientific literature about balding. I'll look for some kind of silver lining in the cloud, because we know that balding is bad, right? So we know that men who go bald have it worse. So they're considered less physically attractive. Another big thing about balding is, since it is a relatively uniform experience, it's so common, right? It's not so rare that people deserve sympathy. It's one of the few aspects of physical appearance that you are allowed to make fun of people for, right? So you can just make fun of people you can crack jokes about people being bald. There's no sympathy. You're the butt of jokes. In the realm of body positivity, like, balding doesn't have a space, right? Body positivity is about weight. It's about curviness. It's about thigh gaps. It's about beards or no beards, but it's not about balding. No one's like, it's okay, like, we should love bald people. No one says that. So balding comes with a huge mental health impact. It comes with a huge societal impact, because it's one of these things that we don't accept. So I've been trying to figure out, like, what can I do to help people who are bald? So I've had patients who have gone bald. Like, sometimes I'll prescribe things like Propecia, which is an androgen converting blocker, an aromatase blocker, right? So there are different things that we can try to do to help people not go bald. But some people go bald. A lot of people go bald. And what do we do to help them? So for 3 years, I've been looking at literature. And I've been trying to figure out, like, what can we do? And the science is very, very, like, disappointing. There's, like, study after study shows that if you're bald, basically there's going to be mental health impacts. There's this concept of pretty privilege, which is very real, right? So if you're considered physically attractive, it comes with all kinds of other advantages. And so then there's this kind of idea that, like, as a bald man, you're going to be insecure. Like, the world is objectively going to treat you worse. The world is not going to give you sympathy for treating you worse, right? They're going to say, this sucks for you, and sorry about that. Actually, they're not going to say sorry. They're going to say, ha, 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 right? Because you're a bald dude. So there's, like, no sympathy. In fact, we're going to treat you like crap. There's all kinds of self-esteem issues that come with that, because you perceive yourself in a particular way, right? So when you look in the mirror, you see you. But as you start to go bald, you're kind of becoming a new you, but it's not like we're embracing a new you. We're actually just losing a better version of yourself. You're just, like, losing a part of yourself that makes you more attractive. It's like just a net loss. There's no gain. So this is why I haven't made much content about being bald, because I haven't found an answer. I haven't found a way to help people beyond, yeah, it sucks. I'm sorry. It do be like that sometimes. So that doesn't work, right? Like, I can't just make a video that says, y'all are screwed. I'm sorry about that. And then there's this flip side that's kind of like, and this is true, so we're going to talk a little bit about this. So the real challenge with being bald is not just that other people treat you differently. The real challenge with being bald is that you treat yourself differently. You lose confidence. You feel that a part of your life is lost. And then this becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because now you have low self-esteem and you're bald, right? Which is like, either of those is enough to screw over your chances at life. Now, if you're looking at me and you're kind of thinking to yourself, here's Dr. K talking about how we're all screwed. Why is he smiling? It's because for the first time in 3 years, I have found something that blew my mind and that gives me hope. Let us look at science. Okay? All right, so before we get to this, there's one thing that I kind of noticed, is that not everyone who is bald is screwed, right? So there's a lot of evidence that shows that on average, it negatively impacts people's lives. But I have friends who are bald. When I go to the playground with my kids, like 30% of the dudes that are bald, but they appear to be just as happily married as I am. I know people who shave their head and are actually in healthy relationships, become successful, right? I've even seen like, you know, everyone's like, oh, women don't like bald dudes. But there's apparently this guy, and apparently a lot of women like this guy, right? And so there's this guy apparently is beloved by women. So clearly some people manage it, right? So let's take a look. So how is this, right? So if we look, oh no, I lost my highlights. Damn it. Okay, we'll fix it. We'll find this. Okay. So, but in reality, we see that there are these mythical creatures out there, these bald men that seem to have confidence, that seem to have relationships. And so how is this possible? And that's when I stumbled upon this paper. And let's look at this, okay? So today, we're going to talk about bald and bad. Experimental evidence for a dual process account of baldness stereotyping. What the hell does that mean? We'll explain it to you. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the science on baldness. So one might ask whether balding men are not only perceived as less good looking, but also less warm and friendly. This is exactly the physical attractiveness stereotype, or PAS. So the first thing that we're acknowledging is that if you're physically attractive, then chances are that people will think you are more competent in other ways. This is called pretty privilege, and there's a lot of like good data to support this, okay? So despite a wealth of empirical support for PAS, that's pretty privilege, experimental evidence is quite mixed for the domain of male pattern baldness. Now that's really interesting. Although most relevant studies agree that bald or balding men are perceived as less physically attractive, right? Here's a bunch of studies. Only some show analogous effects of the evaluation of social attractiveness. So this is where pretty privilege doesn't seem to translate for bald men. So like there's the physical attractiveness, people are rated as less physical attractive. But something is weird is going on when we actually apply to, is this person likable? Is this person likable? Is this person friendly? Do I want to hang out with this person? So physical attractiveness and how much I like this person don't seem to translate for all studies on baldness. While others show no such effects, so no pretty privilege or no discrimination against bald men in other ways. Because they're bald. Okay? Now, one of the reasons for this is that these are all vary considerably in their experimental design. Okay? So let's just pause for a second and just explain what the hell I just talked about. So here's what I mean. So this is what the study says. We all know that people who are attractive get other benefits. When we look at the studies of male pattern baldness, some studies show that bald dudes get all these other benefits. They suffer from the lack of benefits. But many studies actually show that there is no negative consequence to being bald outside of a simple rating of physical attractiveness. Okay? So they don't seem to lose out on pretty privilege because they're bald. Now, the question is like, what on earth? Like, how is that possible? Right? But we have some evidence of this. Why do we have some evidence of this? Because we see that some bald men are able to be successful, happy, have self-esteem, and are in relationships, right? It's not like bald men are unable to live life. That's how it feels. But some people figure this weird secret out. So the question is, what's going on there? Let's take a look. Okay. Does this inconsistent pattern of results question the validity of the pretty privilege, right, physical attractiveness scale in the domain of male pattern baldness? Based on the fundamental distinction between stereotype activation and stereotype application, we argue that the activation of the PAS does not necessarily imply its application at the behavioral level. Now, unless you study science formally, chances are you have no effing idea what this means. So we're going to explain it, but this is crucial. This is mind-blowing. So we have stereotypes of people. The stereotype exists in people's mind. Bald dudes are less attractive. They're less likable. Maybe they're funny. They're less capable. They're less professionally successful. They're less confident. We have all these stereotypes. This is the activation of a stereotype. Okay? So when someone sees that you're bald, all of these thoughts about baldness activate. Fair enough. Now, there is a discrepancy between whether that stereotype actually gets applied to you or not. So even though people have a stereotype for bald people, it appears that some bald men are able to dodge that stereotype. They do something to where all of the negatives of being bald do not apply to them. So let's look further at this paper, which is really interesting. Now we get to the money, okay? So this is what these people did. This is crazy. So they showed people pictures, non-bald version, bald version. And you look at this and like, these people don't look nearly as good as these people, right? Like hair is clearly a win in this situation. But they did something really cool. So non-bald target and bald target. So in this case, we look at physical attractiveness. Not bald, you get basically a 3. Once we make you bald, it's like a -1. You're losing 20%, right? You're between a 1 and a 2. Fair enough. And if we look at socializing, so even if we ask this person, would you like this person? Would you want to hang out with this person? We also see almost a 1-point hit, maybe a half-point hit. So this is consistent with our understanding. So being bald makes you less physically attractive and makes people like you less, think you're less competent. This is what everyone talks about, right? People, no respect for the baldies. Now, let's look at this. Now, this is what's really weird. So when you lose hair, fair enough, you're less physically attractive, but what the F? People like bald people more? What on earth? This is with hair. This is without hair. And the social likableness, the friendliness, the desire to hang out with people can actually go up. Hold on a second. And what does this depend on? This depends on something called individuating information. So, here's what this paper shows us. Because we know that there are some people who are bald who end up being successful, happy, married, with kids, get laid, call whatever measurement you want. Question is how? And now we have research. So what happens? So this is what's super cool. Some bald men defy the expectations of being bald. And when you defy the expectations of being bald, it is a net gain. It is not back to average. It is actually a net gain. And I want y'all to think about this for a second. See, when I have low expectations and someone defies them, they're not back to average, right? So if I have high expectations of something and it is what I expect, I'm actually disappointed. So everyone's like, oh my God, this movie is fantastic, fantastic. I go watch it, it's pretty good, but I'm disappointed. Whereas if someone tells me, oh, this movie is awful, or if I've never heard about it and I go watch it, it defies my expectations, there is a cognitive compensatory response that makes me rate it even higher. Everyone said this place sucked, but it turns out that this is actually awesome. So this is a psychological aspect of all human beings. And it turns out that my bald brothers have access to this, whereas those of us with hair actually don't. Because there are no expectations to defy, right? So when we have a negative stereotype, if you defy that stereotype, you actually end up with a net positive. This is what this study shows us. So now we get to the real problem of baldness. And now we also understand what to do if you're bald. Defy expectations. Now, you may say, but Dr. K, this is so hard because everyone has such strong expectations of bald people, right? Everyone misjudges bald people. Everyone thinks not only are we physically unattractive, but we're pathetic. The stronger the expectations are, the easier it is for you to defy them. The more that people dislike bald people, the more ground you can actually make up. Does that make sense? So the very thing that you think is holding you back is absolutely holding you back. Those expectations exist. People think less of bald people. You are considered less physically attractive. But for every mile you lose or kilometer that you lose in that direction, you can actually make it up if you defy the expectations of being bald. So what does that mean? That means everything else. So you can't defy the expectations around your hair, right? But you can do everything else. So if you get physically in shape, if you become professionally successful, if you work on your confidence and your insecurity, you will actually pick up ground. Because what's going to happen is that same stereotype that is working against you when you were bald is now something that you're defying, right? It's kind of like back in the days when everyone was super racist. I mean, I guess people are still racist now. I don't know. But like back in the day, right? When we didn't have like in the days of slavery and stuff like that. Like it was like crazy that a black person could graduate from medical school. When racism was so systemic and so overt. I'm not saying it's gone. And so the weird thing, and like even I experienced this as an Indian person, right? So there are certain stereotypes that I've dealt with. And then when I end up defying those stereotypes, I get a net positive. Becoming a doctor is not one of them, right? Because that's a stereotype. That's to be expected. So this is the crazy thing, is that when we look at being bald, we say that society treats us unfairly. That's actually objectively correct. We're not saying it doesn't. But if you are bald, there are some things you can control and there are some things that you cannot control. So you can't control whether you have hair or not. You can't control someone's original judgment of you, right? The impression that they form of you within the first 5 seconds of seeing your face, you cannot control that. But what you can control is everything afterward. How much does my identity have to do with being bald? Right? So when one person makes a comment on your baldness, does it ruin your entire day? Those are things that you can control. How much do you take care of the rest of your body? That is something that you can control. And the problem with being bald is that we tend to throw in the towel, right? We tend to think that since all of this judgment is true, there is no point in working on this. Or we think to ourselves, even if I work really hard on this, even if I put in a 10 out of 10 effort, the best I'm going to get is an 8 out of 10 yield because I am bald. Because I can never escape this kind of thing. This is defeatist thinking. This is the big thing that successful bald men have figured out. Right? They've figured out that I can control everything else. And that's what I'm going to put myself into. So if you look at the research on baldness, we see all these self-esteem problems, negative mental health problems. All that stuff is fair enough. I'm not saying that those things are not deserved. But what we also know is that there is a path forward, that even though this one thing you won't be able to change, it actually does not determine your destiny. And this paper blows my mind because it actually suggests the opposite, that there is net ground to gain in terms of social likability. That your physical attractiveness does not determine your actual destiny. And that explains why bald people can be successful and have healthy relationships. So what do we do about this? Don't worry about the baldness. Work on everything else. And pay attention. Because as you try to work on everything else, what will happen is the baldness will take over. Because the baldness makes you pathetic. The baldness makes you a loser. It becomes a part of your identity. You see it every time you look in the mirror. Oh, I am a shadow of what I have been. And what actually determines your destiny is not whether you're bald or not, is whether you believe you are a shadow of what you've been. This is deterministic. So if we look at things like the placebo effect and the nocebo effect, if you believe something will happen, this will have a clinical biological effect. If you believe something won't work, that too will have a clinical biological effect. And this isn't weird social stuff. This is like a pill that inhibits cell division that we give in cancer. Right? Like this is like, there's no society. There's no other human being. This is just the power of your mind. And so the biggest problem that bald people have is not that they're going bald, but the conclusions that they form about themselves, which they think this is true because the world treats me this way. And it's not that you're wrong. It's just that the way that you connect the dots, that's not fair. Do people mistreat you? 100%. Is there sympathy for bald people? Absolutely not. Are people going to judge you as physically less attractive? 100%. Are you going to have less success on dating apps? Maybe. All of that stuff is true. But if you're not careful, what you will do, your mind will take all of those things and it'll jump. This means I'm screwed. This means I'll always be alone. This means I can't do anything. This means it's futile. That's incorrect. Do y'all see the difference? This is very, very important to understand. The problems that we face in our mind, the mistakes that we make, what really determines our future is not the reality of the world. What determines our future is the way that we interpret the reality of the world and the way that we choose to live in this world. It is the way that it shapes our choices and causes us to give up and forget all of those other things. If we can turn that around, if we can say, I'm going to focus on what I can focus on, I can't control that I'm bald, it turns out that we actually gain ground. It turns out that since people expect so little of us, it is easy to defy expectations. It is easy to impress people. Do y'all get that? Impressing is not about meeting expectations. It's about exceeding expectations. So what this study shows us is that it is easier for a bald person to impress someone than someone with hair. Crazy. Crazy, 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 crazy. Okay? Questions? See, people are saying, okay, confidence. So we can't overcome first impressions. This is my point. So the key thing to understand, confidence can't overcome first impressions, but let's understand this. The key thing that we need to understand if we're bald is that first impressions are not deterministic. That's the key mistake that we make, is that we think that this determines our future. It doesn't. The first impression is there. That deck is stacked against you. It's a bad way to start. It's a bad way. Your starting hand, right, as I'm playing my deck building game, sucks. But it doesn't mean that you're screwed. That's the key thing. And remember that in a deck building game, if your starting hand sucks, what does that mean about your future cards? That means good cards are coming. You didn't get your good cards now. They can come down the road. And so you can defy those expectations and end up net positive. Okay. Does this mean that in general being less privileged can actually be an advantage? Yes and no. So this is where we need to be super careful about making comparisons. Less privileged can be an advantage. Yes and no. Right? So I'll give you all just a simple example. So let's look at ACGME admission MCAT statistics. So someone's asking, can being less privileged I'm trying to find where is the... I'm trying to find this. Give me a second, chat. Where is this? Give me a second, chat. I wish there was... I can't find this one table. There's a great table that looks at MCAT score and GPA by ethnicity. Maybe they don't stop publishing. That's so interesting. Oh, here it is. Okay, so here's the thing. So someone's asking, can being less privileged actually be an advantage? So let's take a look at some data. Right? So if we look at the total MCAT score, the mean, this is a total mean score. Okay, so if we look at, like, let's say Dr. K, right? So I'm Asian. This means that the average score that I need to get on an MCAT is a 509.1, and the average GPA I need is a 3.62. Right? So if Dr. K wants to get into med school, this is what he has to get. Now, if we look at some of these other ethnicities, like if I'm an Alaskan Native, then I need a 3.4 GPA instead of a 3.7, and I need a 496 MCAT instead of a 509. Right? So if I'm Black or African American, I need a 497 or a 3.39, as opposed to a 3.7 or 509. Now, I'm not saying that this is a good or a bad policy. This is very important because people will be like, affirmative action, oh my God, like, is he anti-affirmative? No. I'm not making a claim about whether this is good or bad. What I'm pointing out is someone asked me a question. Is being less privileged an advantage? And we, generally speaking, if we look at people like Alaskan Natives, they tend to have some of the hardest lives on the planet. Maybe not on the planet, in the United States. American Indians tend to have some of the worst mental health outcomes, worst financial outcomes, very poor socioeconomic status, high rates of addiction, high rates of myocardial infarction. Like, they're just really poor outcomes. And so there are some cases in which life seems to be a little bit easier for them, right? So there's data to support that. I'm not making a value-based claim about whether this is good or bad. Society should be like this or not be like this. I'm not talking about that. That's not my area of expertise. Let smarter people who know about that decide, or you decide for yourself. But here's what I'm saying. See, in life, there are some things that we can't control and some things that we can control. And the biggest problem that we run into is when we let the things that we cannot control the things that we can control. This is when we truly lose at life. We get so caught up about I'm a disadvantage. And I felt this way back when I was applying to med school. I looked at this and it pissed me off. Because I looked at this and I said, if I was a different ethnicity, I would have gotten into med school years ago. But since I'm Asian, the deck is stacked against me. But there's a flip side to that argument, which is, since I'm Asian, my parents could pay for MCAT classes. My parents could pay for school. I could pay for 5 years of school. I could spend time studying for the MCAT and not worry about how I was going to pay for rent and feed myself and stuff like that. So Indian comes with some advantages. I don't know if things balance out or not, but whatever. The world is the way it is. The right thing to do is not cry about it. The wrong thing to do is cry about it. Because in this life, there are a lot of things that you can't control, which are going to be stacked against you. That's life. What I've seen consistently is that when you let those things dictate everything else, you're bald, fair enough, sucks for you. I mean that. I'm not just saying that facetiously. Because it's the one condition that people are allowed to make fun of you. Right? What? The question is, what else are you doing in your life? How much do you let this dictate other parts of your life? And this is where things get super tricky. You say, okay, like, I can't make friends because I'm bald, because people mistreat me because I'm bald. That I don't accept. I could be wrong in not accepting that. Maybe I don't understand how hard your life is. But as someone who's worked with lots of bald dudes who are depressed and have anxiety and stuff like that, like, there is a way forward. So will first impressions against you be bad? 100%. No question. The deck is stacked against you, but that doesn't mean that you have to lose. And you lose when you throw in the towel. So if you're a bald dude, I don't know what to say about online dating apps, because that's where physical appearance is such a big part of it. But even then, I'm not convinced that, I haven't just seen convincing data that just because you're bald doesn't mean you get 0 matches. There's lots of dudes who get 0 matches. You can absolutely work on your profile. You can work on looks maxing. You can work on your body. You can work on all kinds of stuff. And just like Thor says, you can be bald and sexy. Right? So what we tend to see is that it's the people who are balding and hold on to their former self. Those are the people that are the least attractive. It's the people who embrace it. The people who say, I'm going bald, I'm just going to shave my head. That you got to go that direction. You just got to embrace it, right? I'm going to hit the gym. I'm going to focus on work. I'm going to turn myself into something that is respectable. I'm not going to let this determine the rest of my life. And then your mind will say, but, this is harder, and this is harder, and this is harder, and this is unfair, and this is unfair, and this is unfair. All that stuff is true. So what? So you've got two choices. You can wait for the world to become a fair place, and then you're golden. You're Gucci, baby. Or you can take your life into your own hands and fix what you can. It's up to you. Right? People are talking about Vin Diesel. Right? Like, it's hard being a bald dude. But the whole problem is that we let it dictate. We let baldness take away our power in all the other dimensions of our life. That's the mistake. Yeah, everyone's talking about The Rock and this person and things like that. Who's vacuuming? Yeah, someone's doing something outside. Okay. Yeah, so someone's saying most women don't care about baldness. So there's also a really interesting study I read recently that men's perceptions of what women care about tend to be pretty off. So the problem is that when I hear a lot of men talk about what women want, their data points are usually social media. Their data points are usually things like dating apps, which like kind of makes sense, right? And I'm sure that when I say this, there's going to be an army of people, but I have a friend in real life. I listened to this one conversation and they said they want this, this, and this. I mean, fair enough. I'm not saying that it's always the case. But generally speaking, what I'm noticing is men and women both do this. They are forming their impressions of what the other gender's dating preferences are on the internet. And the internet is not real people. It's a slice of real people. It's a place where the most polarizing opinions rise to the top. There is a silent majority of relatively chill people on the internet. Everyone uses the internet. Not everyone is a crazy on the internet. If you go on the internet, all you will see are crazies. Do y'all understand that? But this psychological concept is hard for us to accept in the dating realm. Why? Makes people angry when I say that. Why? Because it's so unempathic. You have had such a brutal experience, and when I say something like that, it's basically like saying, it's not like that, bruh. It's not like that, girl. And then you're like, yeah, it is. Urgh. I'm not saying that you haven't been brutalized by online dating. Everybody gets brutalized by online dating. That's absolutely correct. But online dating is online dating. It's not men and women. It is a slice of men and women. Right? It's a place where the deck is so messed up that we can't judge normal people based on it. So take a step back, take a deep breath. I know it's very easy to stay attached to our pain. It's very easy to stay attached to our sense of unfairness or injustice. It's very easy to say the world is an unjust place. I want it to change. I shouldn't have to change. I agree with you. You shouldn't have to. The question is, how do you want your life to be? So you can, and that's where, like, honestly, I'm asking that question genuinely. Like, I have an answer for myself and for the people that I work with, and an answer that I advocate for, which is that control what you can and you fucking, come on, guys. Can we count on the world to become a better place on its own? Or do we have to live a life where we have to live in this shitty world and do the best that we can? You tell me. The world is fucking hopeless. Which doesn't mean that your life has to be. So let go of that anger. I'm not disputing the unjustness of it. It's unfair. It's unjust. It sucks. I agree. But it doesn't have to be deterministic. Okay? So bald can be sexy. It's just you know, you need to have the other stuff. Right? Like, let's be honest. And so work on the other stuff. And then turns out that you'll defy expectations and people will be surprised by, oh my God, I didn't expect him to be so confident. Oh my God. He's actually kind of cute. Oh my God. I'm not really into bald guys. Like, I don't date them, but like, you know, like that's what we're shooting for, chat. Y'all can do it. I believe in you. Y'all can do it. All right. It's like someone saying, getting rizzed up. Okay. So someone else is saying, yeah, but how would I feel cute being bald? We're going to talk about that. So we'll talk. Let's talk about being short first. We're not done yet, chat. Okay. Actually, let me ask y'all a question. So I prepared a lecture about insecurity and how to overcome insecurity fundamentally. Do y'all want that lecture now, or do y'all want it after we look at other posts about expressing emotions, being short? Like, what do y'all want? Okay, can we do a poll? So y'all decide, because it's like, on the one hand, like we can look at all the posts and then we can have like the climax, which is like the lecture. Or we can have the lecture, which will frame the posts. Let's keep edging, you fucking degenerates. Oh my God. Oh man. So sometimes people ask me, do I like my job? And hold on, let me see. This is some. Okay, no, yeah. So I'm going to do a post. I'm going to do a poll. Lecture now or posts? Lecture, posts. Short, vulnerable. Oh, poll is already active. Looks like mods rocking it. Okay, people are saying now. All right, fair enough. Okay, chat, we do it now. Lecture now or after? Let's see here. Okay, people want now. It's pretty close. We're going to get to it all. How do I see? Okay. Wow, it's so even. Okay. So, what we're going to do... Oh, nope. What? I screwed it up. Dr. K's lagging. Dr. K's lagging in his brain. Okay. So, we are going to talk about how to not fix, that's the wrong word. So today we're going to talk about how to overcome insecurity. Now, a lot of people may wonder, Dr. K, when you say overcome insecurity, which insecurity are we talking about? Are we talking about feeling bald? Are we talking about feeling ugly? Are we talking about having a wart on our nose? Like, what are we talking about, brah? And I'm talking about all of them. I'm talking about the fundamental way in which an insecurity forms in your mind and how to overcome it. Now, a lot of people misunderstand this because they think that fixing an insecurity is the way to overcome it. But fixing an insecurity is not overcoming it. That is actually feeding into it. So let's understand. So a lot of people think, oh my God, I'm bald. I'm insecure about my appearance. So let me go get hair plugs. Let me start medication. Let me get a wig. Let me do all these things to fix the problem. And then I will no longer be insecure. Now, in one way, that is correct because you won't be insecure, but you won't have overcome your insecurity. So if I think to myself, oh, I don't know how to dance. Let me go take a dance class, and then I'll develop confidence, and then I will be secure in my dancing. I've overcome the insecurity. No, you haven't. You fixed the problem, but you haven't overcome the insecurity. So let's understand what we mean by this. So let's take the example of someone who is insecure about their baldness. And they say, in order to fix this problem, I'm going to get a wig, or I'm going to get hair plugs. And then the problem goes away. So they start wearing a wig. They feel super confident. Now, what happens when their wig blows away in the wind? The insecurity returns. So the weirdest thing about overcoming insecurities is that fixing insecurities is not overcoming them. In fact, it just reinforces it. It just makes it go dormant. So this is the difference between fearlessness and courage. Very different things. To be courageous is to overcome your fear, to have the fear and to overcome it. To be fearless is to remove the fear. And then if it returns, you won't have courage, right? So I can do something like get drunk to overcome my fear, get some good old social courage. Liquid courage and social lubricant before I go ask someone out on a date. Getting drunk doesn't overcome my insecurity. It just makes it temporarily disappear. Y'all understand this? So let's understand how to overcome an insecurity and how actually fixing our problems sometimes reinforces our insecurity. Okay? So here's you. And you have a problem. Let's just call it baldness. Or actually, let's do something. Let's do something that's a little bit more uniform. Let's say out of shape. I'm unhappy with my body. Now, a lot of people think if I'm insecure about my body, what you should do is go to the gym, right? Makes sense. Gym. Now I am in shape, and now I'm confident. Insecurity fixed. So I'm not saying that going to the gym doesn't lead to confidence. It's not that this is not a solution. It's just that it doesn't overcome the insecurity. And now you may say, but Dr. K, how does that work? Like, what are you saying? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Let's take an example of a celebrity, right? So celebrity is someone who is oftentimes very beautiful. And they may have started out a little bit out of shape, but then they go and they do things like gym. They do things like cosmetic surgery, right? They do things like work with a dietitian. They do all these things to fix their appearance. Does that make them secure? Shockingly, not so much. Right? Despite the fact that they are objectively improving the situation, it doesn't necessarily fix their insecurity. So for some people, it does, right? So the gym can help. We're not saying don't go to the gym, but we must understand what an insecurity is. So fixing the problem is making the problem go away. It's not overcoming the insecurity that comes with the problem. Do y'all understand that difference? So let's understand what an insecurity truly is. So there's a problem over here, which has a solution over here. But an insecurity is not in the real world. So this is the real world. And this is your mind. An insecurity exists within the mind. This is the first thing to understand. The insecurity is an aspect of our ego or ahamkara. Which is why if you look at people like celebrities, or you look at people like people with like body dysmorphia, no amount of fixing the problem actually cures the insecurity. It's because the external world, this thing is over here, and the insecurity actually acts completely independently of the external world. So overcoming an insecurity has its own thing, right? So I can help someone who has body dysmorphia, who is overweight, overcome their body dysmorphia without losing weight. Or I can even help someone overcome their body dysmorphia if they're anorexic by gaining weight. Like, the actual weight and the insecurity are not necessarily tied. We think they are, but it turns out that doing this stuff sometimes helps with this stuff. Helps things on a mental level. So let's understand what an insecurity truly is so that we understand how to overcome it. So fixing the problem just makes it go dormant. Then if the problem returns, then the insecurity will return. That's not actually conquering anything. So the first thing to understand about an insecurity is it is most of the time based on how you are perceived. Right? So when I'm insecure about my appearance, what I'm really concerned about is what will other people think when they see me. So when I go to the beach and I leave my shirt on because I'm afraid of what I'm going to look like with my shirt off, what I'm actually concerned about is the opinions of others. So there's a subtle difference here. There are some things that involve a lack of confidence that I have in myself, and I genuinely don't care about what other people think. But I would say that most people, 75+% of people who have insecurities, if you really track it back, what it really comes down to is how other people perceive them. So it is the opinions of others that matters. So the way to overcome that insecurity is to overcome needing the opinions of others. Very simple. We'll talk about how. So the second aspect about opinions of others is insecurities are relative and abstract. They are actually constructions of the mind. They are not realities. So I'll give you all an example. Let's say that, a lot of people that we're going to be talking about today, right? So here's a quick example. I'm short AF and I hate it, right? We're short. Now I'm going to say something that's not going to make any sense. But it's true. Short is not a real thing. Tall is not a real thing. Now people are saying, what on earth, Dr. K, are you crazy? I'm 5'2". That's a real thing. I agree. Being 5'2" is a real thing. Being 6'4" is a real thing. Being short and tall is not a real thing. Short and tall are abstractions of the mind. They are not physical attributes. Height is a measurable attribute. Short or tall is an abstraction or judgment that the mind makes about a physical attribute. This is very important to understand because we do not think like this. This is why we get caught in insecurities. And everyone's saying it is, though. No, it isn't. It is a judgment. So I cannot measure tall. How tall is tall? What is tall? 6 foot. For a giraffe? No, for a giraffe, it's different. Wait, hold on a second. What is tall? Show me the definition of tall. Show me the definition of short. Height is a measurable quantity. Tall and short are relative. Do you all understand this? Oh, she is tall for a girl. He's short for a guy. Man, this guy is so short. He's 6'6". What are you talking about short? He's 6'6". Well, he plays in the NBA. It's short for the NBA. It's all relative and an abstraction. You cannot biopsy tall. You cannot x-ray tall. You cannot measure tall. You can measure height. That is real. So the first thing to understand is that the ego is about abstraction. It is about features of ourselves and judgments that we make. Now, a lot of people will say, but people all agree with this. We'll get to that in a second. But remember, the whole point of overcoming your insecurity is that the nature of an insecurity is caring about what other people think. Right? So we're going to try to get rid of that. That's the whole point. We'll get there. First thing to understand is our mind, there's reality, and then there's the construction that our mind makes. Okay? So tall and short aren't real things. They're useful concepts, don't get me wrong, but they're not actually reality. So now the question becomes, if I feel tall or if I feel short, how do I overcome that? So these are attributes of the ego. So the ego is a construction of different abstractions about myself. So even something like I'm a doctor, right? So you can say I'm a doctor. I would even argue that that's an abstraction. You can't x-ray me and find a doctor. You can't biopsy and find a doctor. I have a diploma on my wall. I have a piece of paper. Someone else could buy a piece of paper and they could stick it on their wall. Does that make them a doctor? No. Well, I've been through medical school. Well, there are some people who have been through medical school who aren't practicing physicians. Does that make them doctors? Well, kind of. I mean, technically they're a doctor. There's someone who gets a PhD, like they have DR in front of their name. Does that make them a doctor? Well, yeah, it makes them a doctor of philosophy. You see what I mean? Like, it's all abstractions. We create these concepts. It's not a physical attribute of reality. I'm not saying that doesn't have utility in the world. But this is very important to understand, because if you want to understand insecurity, you have to understand the nature of ego. So our ego is a collection of all of the abstractions we think about ourselves. I am a doctor. I am a good person. I am a bad person. I'm a winner. I'm a loser. You can't biopsy loser. You can't biopsy winner. I'm tall. I'm short. I'm pathetic. I'm awesome. These are all abstractions, things that we attach to the mind. I'm a noob. I'm an expert. I am ... There will be an abstraction that comes afterward. So how do we overcome this? So ego is born of comparison. And the more that we accept what we are, the less comparison will go away and the less ego will activate. Because tall can't exist without short. A comparison is necessary for an insecurity. I'm so ugly, that means other people are beautiful. I'm so lazy, that means other people are hardworking. So anytime you make a comparison, anytime the mind has someone else over here and you relative to that other person, there will be an insecurity. So now let's understand how going to the gym fixes the insecurity. So there are ways that it can actually overcome the insecurity. And let's understand what the process is. So I've worked with people who do this, right? So they go to the gym, they think they're pathetic. They look at all of these other people who are so much more in shape than them, and they are out of shape. And we make a comparison. Look at that person is so great at this, and I'm so bad at this. And then something magical happens cognitively in the brains and minds of these people. At some point, someone gives them a fist bump, someone who's in way better shape than you are. They help you out a little bit. They spot you. They ask you to spot them. Something weird happens where there's no comparison. And then you start to see this person in a different light. We're both people who are just going to the gym and working on our goals. Your mindset shifts. And if your mindset shifts, you overcome the insecurity. It's not the actual getting into shape. That can come with confidence and stuff like that. But even then, if you look at the confidence, what is confidence? Confidence is acceptance of yourself. It is not you relative to someone else. Arrogance is a little bit, actually, arrogance isn't the right term. But if we look at like ego is in comparison. So smartest requires someone else to be the stupidest. But confidence is acceptance of who you are. So the real way to fix an insecurity is to accept yourself as you are and not attach a label. That doesn't mean inaction, right? So it doesn't mean that I'm not going to go to the gym. What that means is I accept that my body is not ideal and I'm going to do something to try to fix it. It is an attitude. It is playing a single player game. So the moment that you convert the multiplayer game into a single player game, the moment you go into offline mode, unplug the internet and focus on yourself. Stop thinking about other people. The insecurity will dissolve. This is the way to overcome any insecurity. If you look at any insecurity, it is going to be a comparison to someone else. And as long as it is relative, the target will keep moving because it's relative. This is how people with body dysmorphia look at themselves in the mirror and they get one cosmetic surgery, another cosmetic surgery, another cosmetic surgery. This is the way that the most beautiful people on the planet who are celebrities look at themselves in the mirror and they think they're the ugliest piece of shit on the planet. How on earth is this possible? It's because it's divorced from reality. Insecurity is within the mind. If you disable the ego, the insecurity will dissolve. We can even understand this in a moment to moment. I'm talking about a permanent change, but let's understand this. When are you insecure? You're insecure about your appearance when you look in the mirror, when other people see you, when other people see you without a shirt. So there's a fluctuation in the activity of your insecurity. And if you're like me, you're also one of these insecure people who tries to fix your insecurity by practicing in secret. I'm going to start working out for 2 or 3 weeks before I even go to the gym so that I don't look pathetic. I'm going to start dancing in secret. I'm going to start watching YouTube videos before I even go to a dance class or before I go to the gym. I want this growth to be in secret because I don't want to show people how pathetic I am. And once I get good in secret, then I'm going to show up in the world and I'm going to be like, look at me. I'm so great. Oh, yeah, I just picked it up. It wasn't actually that hard. Like, oh, my God, you think I'm talented? Oh, I just started this. It's so easy. It's like these people like, yeah, I don't study. I don't study. You fucking noob. You fucking study. You're so dumb. We want to be brilliant, effortlessly brilliant. We don't want to show anyone our sweat, our blood, or our tears. This is ego. It is comparison. It is thinking about other people. And you will notice that your insecurity rises or falls depending on whether other people are involved. So remove other people from your mind. Start to play a single player game. Literally notice the thoughts that you have that involve a comparison. And literally what we want to do is accept what we are. I'm not in shape or out of, I'm at the level of shape that I am. It is neither good nor bad. It is what is. What are you going to do about it? So insecurity comes from where you want to be and where you are. This gap is the insecurity. This is where I am. This is where I want to be. In this gap, the bigger this gap is, oh, this person is a 10 out of 10, I'm a 1 out of 10. This person is 6'2", I'm 5'2". This is the gap of the insecurity. The bigger the gap, the bigger the insecurity, right? But what that means is that we require 2 points in order for this to be a reality. So how do we fix this? We take away one of the points. Then the insecurity disappears. I am what I am. Am I out of shape? Absolutely. Am I going to work out today? Absolutely. Am I better than I was yesterday? Absolutely. When these 3 things happen, the insecurity will be conquered. Because now it's about, I start here and now I've moved here. This is progress. Now this gap becomes progress. This gap becomes something to be proud of instead of something to be ashamed of. You will flip it on its head. Insecurity is of the mind. It is of comparison. It is of the ego. It cannot exist without these 3 things, which is why we feel so secure when we're by ourselves, because no one is looking. But you're still just as out of shape whether someone is looking at you with your shirt or without your shirt. What the fuck? Right? Doesn't make sense. The insecurity is from the external observation. So if you want to conquer all, it doesn't matter what insecurity it is. You can be short, you can be ugly, you can be this, you can be that, you can be pathetic, you can be smart, you can be stupid. It doesn't matter. The moment that you start focusing on yourself and you ignore what other people do or how they treat you, the better off you're going to be. Now, a lot of people may say, but Dr. K, other people will mistreat me. They do judge me for being short, or they do judge me for being overweight, or they do make fun of me. That's true. I'm not saying that that isn't true. Now, let's understand something. I get made fun of quite a bit. Even today. I used to get made fun of quite a bit, and people made fun of me a lot. So there are people who can make fun of you, and what determines whether that hurts or doesn't? That depends on your security or your insecurity. The fact that other people make fun of you is the outside world. Whether you let it sink in is the inside world. Whether you accept yourself, if someone says, oh, look, you're not the most handsome man on the planet, I'd be like, yeah, you're right, bro. You're not the smartest man on the planet. Fair enough. You're not the best streamer. Yeah, you're correct. I'm okay with that. I'm not the best dad. I'm not the best gamer. I'm not the best streamer. I'm not the best doctor. I'm not none of those things. Okay, I am who I am. I accept myself for who I am. I'm proud of where I've come. If you're unhappy with it, that's your problem. Right? Well, why do I want to get caught up in someone else's disappointment? Like, what the fuck? That's dumb. I have enough of my own disappointments to deal with. I don't need to take on yours. It's silly. It's the stupidest thing on the planet. And I say this as someone not judgmental. I'm not saying y'all are dumb. I did this for like 15 years, 20 years. I was taking all of my own disappointments and I was swallowing everybody else's. Right? I have enough of my own to deal with, and I'm going to focus on those. And the more that you focus on those, the more that you focus with the things that you are unhappy with yourself about, stop worrying about other people's judgments, because other people's judgments will actually keep you from fixing the problem. Other people's judgments are rarely as good motivators as you wanting something for yourself. Because anytime you do something to satisfy someone else, that depends on whether they're looking or not. So the behavior will increase when they're paying attention and will decrease when they're not paying attention. This is very frustrating for people who are in relationships. You go to your partner and you say, hey, I think we need to start eating healthy. And they're like, okay, fine. Yeah, we need to eat healthy. And they eat healthy when you're around, and then they don't eat healthy when you're not around, and then you get frustrated. Or on the flip side, you're like, your partner's like, hey, we should eat healthy, and they're going to the gym, so you're like, all right, whatever. But when they're not looking, like, get some nuggies, baby. Let's go. See what I mean? So insecurity is in your mind. It is born of the ego. It is born of comparison. As long as your mind is making comparisons, the insecurity will be there. So be focused on yourself. Be focused on accepting where you are and take one step forward. And then the insecurity will disappear. If someone wants to criticize you, fair enough. They're not wrong. But your value as a human being does not depend on that attribute. Your value in the workplace may depend on that attribute. And this is what I've seen with the hundreds of people I've worked with. So I became a doctor in 2014. It's crazy to think that I've been a doctor for 10 years. Saw my first patient 4 years before that as a first-year medical student. I've been doing this in some capacity for 14 years. That's a lot of time to see patients. Blew my mind as I thought about it. So the objective world may judge you harshly, but here's the crazy thing. When I help people let go of their insecurities, the objective world loves them for it. Because as you start actually making progress, as you hold yourself to your own standard, as you stop living up to someone else's, that cuts out all the deception. It cuts out, oh my God, only when this person is watching, that's when I'm going to work hard. And the moment they stop watching, I'm going to be lazy. When my boss is at work, I'm going to work. And when my boss isn't at work, I'm not going to work. And then over time, what do you think that does to your value in the marketplace? Not much. So the beautiful thing is, as you stop caring about other people, you will get better and people will respect you more. It's crazy. So, overcoming insecurity, don't make the mistake of fixing your problems. I'm not saying don't fix your problems. By all means, fix your problems. But don't expect fixing your problems to fix the insecurity. And on the flip side, for those of you who are faced with unsolvable problems, like going bald, you can't go to the gym and work yourself into a full head of hair. Good news, you don't need to overcome that insecurity. You don't actually need to fix the problem. So stop being bound by the problems of your life. By all means, fix them. By all means, make progress. But overcoming insecurity is in the mind, is in the ego, and is born of comparison and other people's opinions. The more you shed each of those things, the more free you'll be. And the more free of other people's expectations you are, the more motivated you will actually be to act. You'll tap into this beautiful thing called inspiration and giving a shit, instead of being motivated by terror and living up to expectations and trying to avoid disappointment. When you're living a life of trying to avoid disappointment, the best you can ever feel is relief. You can never feel accomplishment. When it comes from you, then you can feel pride and accomplishment. Make sense? Questions? It's like 50% of Asmongold stream content. How so? What does Asmongold stream content have to do with this? Oh, about going bald. Yeah, so everything. Do you think happiness is a choice? Kind of, honestly. Honestly, kind of. So there are certain neuroscience mechanisms which correlate with happiness, and some of those are under your control. That's what I would say. Someone's asking, what do I do if I have a crippling insecurity? So this is where, see, understand the mechanism of insecurity. When you say you have a crippling insecurity, what is that precisely? How does it manifest in the mind? When does it activate? When does it go dormant? What is the source of it? What makes it better? What makes it worse? You have to understand the nature of insecurity. And from a very practical perspective, one of the things that you can do is like when you meditate, do you feel insecure when you meditate? Okay. Okay. There's a lot of great questions. Okay. So one person is saying, if a classical pianist is insecure about performing a piece on stage, I think the solution is large amounts of solitary practice, not what you just said. Yes and no. So remember that what I'm saying is that solving an external problem in the world is solving an external problem in the world. So if you don't know how to play a piece, you should learn how to play the piece. And lots of solitary practice is very good. But I've literally worked with classical pianists who go up on stage and are insecure despite the fact that they practice sufficiently. Their insecurity is categorized as an illness because the real world says you should not be insecure. You are a famous classical pianist who can play this in your sleep, and yet they remain insecure. So this is what I mean about the confidence. So you can solve your problem. I'm not saying don't go to the gym. What I'm saying is that solving the problem sometimes does not solve the insecurity because the mechanism of the insecurity is different. And it's even reached the point where I've worked with pianists who will go and participate at things where they've never practiced and they still have confidence. Right? So there was someone who did an event at a bar where they'd never played any of these pieces. So they've never practiced and they're still okay with it because it's fun, because of their attitude. So I'm not saying that solitary practice is not part of the solution. Going to the gym is also part of the solution. But we must be precise about what the problem is, where it comes from. If I'm insecure about romantic relationships which involve other people, how do I leave other people out of it and work on myself? This is a great question. I think we have a lot of stuff on relationships coming up on Friday, by the way. So, this is great. Okay, actually, before we get to that, I'm going to get to this one. What if I feel selfish only focusing on myself? A great question. Okay, what's the downside of being selfish? Is it that people will perceive you as selfish? So even this could be like one of these like meta kind of infinite loop things. Well, what is the problem with being selfish? I don't feel like a good person. Where does that come from? Do people judge you for not being a good person? Right? Y'all get that? It's kind of crazy. Because someone may say, no, they don't, it's not because of their judgment. I believe that. And I saw someone else asking chat, how can you tell if something is like internal or external? Is this something you want or something the external world wants? Over on the membership side in mid-May, we have a deep dive into self-discovery. So this is going to be like a deep dive. It's going to be a 2.5-hour lecture and Q&A all about self-discovery and the mechanism of self-discovery. It's going to be a little bit more detailed, requires some study ahead of time. So that's why we're not just like streaming it as a topic. So generally speaking, on the membership side, we cover things that require homework and preparation. And for those of y'all that want to come and go, here we are. Okay? So let's understand selfishness. Like, so is it the perception of being selfish? Or is it like, think about it? Okay? Because you can say like, no, but I want to do good by others. But that's where like, I haven't met many people. Most of the selfless people that I've met usually take care of themselves and are totally okay with it. Like, here's the time that I devote to taking care of myself, and here's the time that I devote to taking care of other people. And the people who sacrifice their own time for the benefit of others are oftentimes not mentally in a good place. This is a consequence, not quite a mental illness, but they have a vulnerability to their guilt, for example. So if we look at emotions, right, our emotions are sources of information and motivation. They're part of our decision-making process. They're not the dictators. But for some people, they are the dictators. I do not control my anger controls me. I don't control my sadness controls me. I don't control my guilt controls me. So this is a problem. This is something that needs to be fixed. It doesn't classify as a diagnosis, but I would say that is unhealthy. And so some people are selfless out of the avoidance of guilt. That is your guilt controlling you. It's not true selflessness. It is avoidance of guilt. And then the crazy thing is that if someone can make you feel guilty, they can control your behavior. So oftentimes what happens with people who are serially selfless, chain givers, is that they have people in their lives who induce guilt. And the only way that you can deal with your guilt is by giving someone what they want and sacrificing of yourself. So sacrifice becomes an antidote of guilt. And what that means is that you go on sacrificing, and the guilt comes, people make you feel guilty, and then your life becomes empty. You become a husk of yourself. You've given away everything that you have to give and more. This is not healthy. Okay. How can I fix the feeling of costing my parents too much? I heard that as a kid. It's ingrained in me. So the first thing to understand, this is a beautiful question. It's ingrained. It's not true. There's a big difference. So the simplest way to overcome anything that is ingrained with you, I'm not saying it's easy, but it works, is noticing it. Saying, this is an echo from the past. It's not a statement of truth now, or it's even their perception. Fair enough. They're entitled to their opinion. It doesn't make it true. So if you go to psychotherapy, we'll help people with things like cognitively reframing, where we don't assume that a thought that you have is truth. There's a big gap between thought and truth, right? You can think all kinds of things in your head. Doesn't make them reality. That's the problem. So you recognize that this has been ingrained. So on the yogic side, we have this concept of vasana. Vasana is a mental habit. That's all it is. It doesn't make it true. So you will notice certain habitual patterns of thinking and just notice that this is the habit, this is the habit, this is the habit. The habit really controls us when we don't believe it's a habit. When we look at this and we think, my mind is correct. That's the problem, is that we believe our mind. Not that the mind has the thought. So disbelieving your mind is a very important skill. In Sanskrit, vivek, discrimination. When I work with people like incels, the goal is to help them disbelieve their conclusions. Okay? Okay. Let's talk about short. Okay. Hello, my name is Rick, and I'm a 158 cm Mexican incel, 5'2" approximately, and I really hate it. That's been a problem since elementary school. I was bullied by all the kids there, girls included. That gave me a huge complex with my height even now. This defect bothers me all the time. Many girls say that it is preferable to do it with a dog than with me. In all the posts on the internet, I'm curious how old this person is, confirming it and saying that I'm the worst that anyone could have, only make it worse, and that really pisses me off. I'm 20 years old now, and I've never kissed a girl, and obviously I've had some kind of sexual experience or romance in general. Haven't had, I'm assuming this person is saying. And that really depresses me. I feel very, very bad. I don't know what to do. Sometimes I see beautiful girls out there and I want to talk to them, but I'm too afraid to do so, especially the tall ones, who ironically are my favorite type of girl. I'm sure that it will be an absolute failure and that they will send me to hell with no other option, as has happened to me so many times. Now I just want to regain some hope and see if there is something I can do, or is it just better to, it's not better to self-mutilate. I'm just joking, but there was a moment when I actually thought about it seriously, and that scares me. I don't want to end up like that, so what can I do? Okay? So I'm 5'4". I hate being short. People mistake me for being 12. It's ruined my chances. Women avoid me. I'm always at a disadvantage. I couldn't defend myself. They dehumanized me. They won prize. They always won despite being the aggressors. I hate how I can never change now that I'm 20. Leg lengthening surgery, not a great idea, y'all. We'll talk about that in a second. I hate that I have to spend more time in this useless body that always loses. Right, so being a short guy is killing me. This happens again and again and again. So this summarizes it, right? So let's talk about being short. This is going to be hard. So see, if you're a short person and you grow up in the world today, this is going to be your experience. People will make fun of you. People will take advantage of you, right? It's an okay thing to make fun of. We're talking about body positivity. Usually it's about weight. It's not about height, right? And there are all these like things on social media about like, people discriminating against dudes against their height, and then the dude slaps back, and how much do you weigh? And then the girl gets pissed off, and then we all feel good and we feel self-righteous and everyone feels great because someone else hurt me and I want to see them get hurt. The cycle of trauma continues. So if you're short, the experience of many people is that your life is over, that you have no chance. There's so much hatred. But the one thing that you should really pay attention to as we look at all of these posts is the definitiveness of it, the concreteness of it, the lack of flexibility. There's no doubt in this person's mind that anything can ever change. This is determined. This is not true. Now, if I say to people this is not true, what will happen? People will say, Dr. K, you are wrong. Here is all of the evidence. And therein lies the problem. See, if someone says things can be different, and your immediate response is no, they can't, what are you doing to your possible solutions? You're knocking them out before you even explore. The basic problem here is close-mindedness. Now, I know this sounds very, very unempathic, right? Because here we are, these people are struggling. I'm not saying that their life hasn't been like this, but it doesn't determine your future. Your past doesn't dictate your future. I don't really believe that. We have a lot of evidence to the contrary, right? The future is undetermined, and we can take actions to influence it. But what I want y'all to do is, if I say your life can be better and your instinctive reaction is no, it can't, think for a moment about what you did when possible solutions came along. No, it doesn't work for me. There's no way that that could work. Everyone on the internet, this is a uniform experience. So here's the crazy thing. See, if we look at the internet, this is what we see. What we don't see is the people who have successfully managed relationships while being short. They're not the ones that we post. So there's a huge selection bias on the internet. And then people will, once again, if I say that, what happens in the mind of someone who's short? But it's been my experience. I'm not talking about the internet. This is how I literally get treated every single day. Once again, I say that there's an opportunity, the mind rejects it. This is the core problem. The most damaging thought that you can have is that this doesn't work for me, or when a solution is presented, if you immediately discount it. So I've seen this as a psychiatrist, where I'll say to someone, hey, like, I think this medication could help you. They immediately say, there's no way it's going to help me. I've tried 10 medications. Nothing ever works. Now, we must understand, why is it that I'm saying that this is potentially a damaging thing? Because you're sitting there and you're thinking, this is my reality, Dr. K. You don't know my reality. And you're right. I don't, right? You have lots of good arguments as to why I'm wrong. And it so happens that I'm not. So this is where things get kind of shady. So if we look at studies of cognitive bias, okay, what we see is a lot of very interesting things. Memory is not objective by any means. And furthermore, the worse you feel mentally, the less subjective memory becomes. And it's not just about the way that memories are laid down. Your brain literally will rewrite memories of the past based on current experiences. So what we know, for example, on studies of trauma, is that if someone gets traumatized, let's say someone gets sexually assaulted, their brain will go rewrite all of their previous neutral experiences to be negative. This has been studied. We also know that there are studies, so Aaron Beck was one of the first people that sort of noticed this, that we have a cognitive bias in things like depression and anxiety. So what happens is that when someone who has a negative attitude, their mind has a negative cast, when there are positive things, they get generalized and fuzzed out. It's not that they become negative. So the actual technical bias in depression is an overgeneralization of the positive. So the negative events are very lifelike. We even know the mechanism of it. Or not the mechanism, what it literally looks like. The negative event gets seared in your mind. All of the positive events become fuzzy. They get glossed over. It's not that you forget them. There's literally an overgeneralization. So if you ask someone who's depressed about details about positive experiences, they can't remember any details. You ask them details about negative experiences, they remember them 100%. So there is a huge perception bias. And we know that the perception bias, the strength of the perception bias, correlates with the negative state of the mind. More depressed you are, more anxious you are, more traumatized you are, the more that your perception changes, the more that your memory changes. So I'm not disputing that this is your experience. This is the crazy thing that these scientific studies show us. Your experience is not reality. And I know that this is so unempathic to say, right? Because what are we supposed to say? We're supposed to say, yeah, your life is hard. And I do believe that, by the way. There's objective evidence that people who are short struggle. They get judged harshly. People don't give them a chance. Women don't look at them, don't consider them. Some women don't. So there are absolutely elements of truth. But if we look at cognitive bias, what we see is that most of life, 25% of it is good, 25% of it is bad, 50% of it is in the middle. But the nature of cognitive bias makes the 25% become neutral, the 50% to become negative. And in the cases of people who have legitimate reasons to be upset, which I think all these people do, it's probably not 25. Okay? So this is the fact of it. And this is where if you're short, I'm not saying that you're at a disadvantage. I mean, you aren't at a disadvantage. You absolutely are at a disadvantage. Women will, especially if you're a dude, women will they'll discount you. Many of them will discount you right away. That's absolutely correct. But it doesn't determine your future. It is not deterministic. Is it a disadvantage? Yes. Is it final? No. Right? Because there are short people who procreate all the time. Happens. So the question is how? And this is where the real challenge of being short is that there are two things here, right? One is what you can control, and what is what you can't control. So what I want y'all to think about, right? And we've got women in the audience. So let's ask the women in our audience, would you want to date this person? And if you wouldn't want to date them, why? right? So even if we can ask the men in the audience, like, would you want to be in a romantic relationship with this person, presuming you're gay or they're of the gender that you're attracted to, or sorry, you're gay or whatever, right? What is it that, how do you feel about this person? You know, and this is where, like, now we have to be super careful because the rubber's hitting the road. When you look at this, what are people saying? Right? And what people are saying is not because they're short, right? So we have women in our audience right now who are responding to this live. Right? And some people are saying, how big is their banana? Right? So we're getting a full range of responses, but the overwhelming response is this person is too negative and too insecure. Some people are even getting excited and they're saying, I can fix them. Great. No, purely because of how they hate themselves and think so lowly of themselves. So this is both the joy and the terror of the healthy gamer community. We're 70% men, 29% women, 1% non-binary. Something like that. So we have women in our community. And this is what's so frustrating about being a man who hates how tall they are and hates women for not giving them a chance, is that sometimes women will give you a chance. Women are saying it's the negativity that's the biggest turnoff. And that's what I would agree with as well. And if you're a short person in the world today, you can't fix your height. And I know that people have leg lengthening surgery and stuff like that. This is anecdotal, okay? So I'm not talking about randomized controlled trials and stuff like that. But anecdotally, I have never met a person who has had leg lengthening surgery who is not, like, fucked up by it, bluntly. And the sample size is small. This is like, we're talking like less than 10 people, okay? So maybe it's gotten a lot better. But what we're talking about, so leg lengthening surgery is usually the method that I'm familiar with, is they fracture the shin bone. And then they insert metal rods between the two halves of the shins. And they give you a couple of inches. But oftentimes these people have debilitating pain, have difficulty walking. It doesn't really seem worth it just for the few, like, you can't, like, live your life normally after that. Maybe I'm just seeing bad outcomes. Like, some of these people have gone internationally to have the surgery done. I don't think I've worked, maybe one person has had it done in the United States. So I'm not saying that it's like an overall bad procedure. I'm just sharing my anecdotal experience of, like, it comes with a lot of costs that people don't realize when they go and get it done. Which is like, you can't go hiking anymore because you're in, like, relatively constant pain. Maybe the surgical methods have improved and maybe outcomes are better. Maybe it's fine now. Who knows? I mean, everything gets better in medicine, so it probably won't be like that forever. And so the crazy thing here is that, like, I hate to say it because it's an answer that you don't like, right? No one likes this fucking answer, which is that you got to work on yourself. You can't fix your height, but you can work on the other things. Can you get in shape? Can you become better at flirting? Can you get better at socialization? Can you become more professionally successful? Can you do all, because all of these things are under your control. Now, a lot of people will say, I can't get better at socialization because people don't even talk to me. They won't even interact with me. So there it is again. We come to the most damaging thought, which is the immediate rejection of help. And if we really look at someone, I want y'all to think about this. Two people. One person immediately rejects help. One person does not. Which one do you think is going to do better in life? Now, a lot of people will say, but I have a reason for rejecting help. I agree. I'm not saying that you don't have a reason. I'm not saying that you haven't tried. And it's still true that if you immediately reject help, if you don't try to do things, then there's almost zero chance of improvement. And then some people will say, I have tried. To which I will say, I hate to break it to you, but try better. Try harder. Try again. That's the only way. Right? And this is where we have to tunnel down into a lot of details. So that's what we do here. Why do we stream over and over and over again? Because when I say try better, I know that that's a dumb answer. You're like, how? That's why we have everything else. That's why we teach you about ego. That's why we teach you about ADHD. That's how we teach you about benefits of narcissism, sociopathy. That's how we teach you about how to build your confidence. That's why we teach you about depression and anxiety and borderline personality disorder and how to meditate. That's why we teach you about things like ADHD and obesity and how adipocytes are not inert fat storage cells but are hormonally active. That's why we teach you all of these things. But we can teach you all this stuff. It's not going to make a flip of a difference unless you try. Cognitive flexibility, number one thing these people need. This is what I work on, especially with incels. All these fixed beliefs. It's the fixedness of the mind. Because once your mind becomes fixed, you reject information that is contrary to it, which only solidifies your opinion. So if you talk to an incel, you'll see this, where people will say, this could be different, and the incel will say, no, it isn't. That's the problem. So do you use your understanding to shape the evidence, or do you use the evidence to shape your understanding? All right, goes back to this paper. This is such a great paper, man. See if I can find it again. Oh, hold on, chat. I find it. Right, so if y'all were here earlier, we talked about how baldness can be an advantage, which is crazy because we don't think about baldness as an advantage. Baldness is a disadvantage. But here it is, chat. When you add individuating information to someone who is bald, they become more socially likable. Okay, so let's talk about individuating information. So if you're a dude or a woman who has a stereotype that is against you, so we're talking about being bald, being short, being fat, pick, whatever it is. The stereotype is real. The stereotype will result in an instant judgment of people against you. But you can actually make up that ground and more by adding individuating information. What does that mean? So when we have a stereotype, we don't judge you for you. We have that judgment to begin with, right? And this is the big problem with people who are short, is they don't get it. No one gives them a fair chance. So what it turns out is that it's not that people do give, I don't know if they give you a fair chance. They prejudge you. That's absolutely correct. But the beautiful thing is that the more individuating information you add to the equation, the more their esteem of you will go up and will even rise above what they would give someone who is taller or has hair or whatever. You can surpass the physical attractiveness by adding individuating information. Now, what does that mean, adding individuating information? That is expressing parts of yourself that do not conform to the stereotype. So if we look at the women in chat today, we ask them, would you date this person? Why do you think these people don't date short people? It's not because they're short, it's because they're negative. And then you will counter that. You'll say, but this person made fun of me because I was short. These girls made fun of me. Like if you're in high school, girls will make fun of you for any reason. It's not because of the reason. It's because other people are making fun of you. That's what fucking happens in school, is everyone dogpiles whatever. I mean, like, I got made fun of for being Hindu, right? It's not like being Hindu is an objective disadvantage in life. I mean, maybe it is. I haven't seen research on it. But everyone dogpiles onto something because that's what kids do, because kids are assholes. Because kids are assholes doesn't mean you're a pathetic person. I wouldn't trust them. That's been them, right? That's the age that you grew up in. You're 20, things will be different. You find decent human beings and they'll treat you decently. It's not about your height. It's about the decency of the people that you interact with and what you bring to the table. So if people sort of look at short people as negative, which is fair enough, right? Because we see that a lot. And if you happen to be the one positive short person, you will gain ground. And this is what I have seen in the short kings who are in healthy relationships. Did they have to work harder than their tall comrades? 100%. Was it fair to them? Absolutely not. But they can get there. And if y'all are asking me, what do I do about this? I'm saying you can get there. Is it unfair? No. I mean, yes. Is it fair? Absolutely not. Are you going to have to work harder? Absolutely. Can it be done? Absolutely. Will it be worth it? Absolutely. So add individuating information. Separate yourself from the crowd of the other short people, from the other bald people, from the other overweight people, from the other unemployed people. Doesn't matter what it is. Any stereotype. Add color to your personality. Show them that you are not just this stereotype. And when you do that, you will pick up ground. It's not just going to compensate for the discrimination. You will actually overachieve. That's what this one study shows. Now, this is not a study that is scientifically definitive. This is an exploratory study that found one signal. I'm cherry picking this out of a swath of data. Not that the majority of the data says the opposite, but very few studies will look at this precision. It's a very well-designed experiment. It's a signal of hope. It's not scientific proof. It's evidence of something, not a definitive conclusion. So I'll be the first to admit that. But I've seen it. So it gives me hope. And it can give you hope too. All right. So someone's saying, genuinely curious how much this concept has affected me in life now. It's affected everyone so much. See, this is what's crazy. When people look at their lives, they think their lives have been determined by external circumstances. Like I'm short, or I'm bald, or I'm overweight, or I'm poor, or whatever. We're not saying that those things don't affect it. They can affect them a lot. But in my overwhelming experience as a psychiatrist and as a meditation teacher, I've been seeing patients for 14 years. I've been a doctor for 10 years. I've been teaching meditation for 20 years. What's crazy is, yeah, your circumstances determine a lot about your life, but it's what goes on in here that shapes your life every moment of every day. This has so much more power over your life than the external circumstances. And I know it's hard to believe. And you say, Dr. K, every moment of every day, what about when you're sleeping? This shit's working even when you're sleeping. We have dreams, we have nightmares, we have emotional processing going on while you sleep. So I worked with a couple of esports teams. And I'm not as good at the video games as they are. So what was my job? To shape this. Because when you shape this, it shapes the performance in the outside world. And esports is a great example of this, right? So like shaping this doesn't affect how good your opponents are. It doesn't affect what the game developers decide to patch in terms of balance changes. This only affects your behavior. It affects your expectation. It affects the way that you respond to things. So this is the crazy thing. In life, your life is not determined by what happens. It's determined by how you respond to what happens. Do you all understand this? My girlfriend broke up with me. Am I going to go into a 3-year-long depression where I stay hung up on her, stalk her social media, and drink every day? Or am I going to say to myself, that sucks. It really hurts. I feel depressed for a while, but I have more experience at relationships. I will be a better boyfriend in the future. And there are serious problems that I brought to this relationship that I can fix. Do y'all get this? And Carol Dweck has a ton of research on mindset. It is what goes on in here that correlates with outcomes. Growth mindset or performance mindset. This shapes your life every moment of every day. The circumstances happen just once in a while. You say, oh, this girl rejected me. How many girls reject you a day? How much does this control you a day? Now, you may say, but Dr. K, I can do everything that I can up here and I still can't shape the world. I agree. Right? You can't shape the world. You can't make someone like you. I mean, shit, I should know that. Here I am talking about the problems of the internet. And how much of a difference can I make? None. I can't shape your thoughts. I can't fix your problems. I can't give you additional height. There's no secret mantra that will make you 2 inches taller. Oh. I mean, maybe there is. Who knows? There actually is a siddhi that is described in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. Siddhi means accomplishment or perfection that allows you to change your size. Shrink down to the size of an atom or grow to the size of a planet or universe or something like that. That's what it said. Apparently it's in there. Who knows? I don't know how to do it, and I certainly can't teach y'all. So what difference can I make? I can look at this, oh my God, look at all this negativity on the internet. It's like trying to empty the ocean with a spoon. And so then the question becomes, just because I will have no effect and can't fix the problem, well, let me rephrase. Just because I can't fix the problem, does that mean I'm going to stop trying? No. And look at where we are. Interesting, no? Is my mind better than your mind? Am I more capable than you are? No. That's the crazy thing, right? I have a mind just like yours. I have a brain just like yours. Everything is about the same. My karma is different. Fair enough. My circumstances are different. You'll see the absurdity of what we're doing here. Like, this is crazy. What can one human being do? Very little. Or is it a lot? Oh, interesting. Well, hold on a second. Is it a lot or is it a little? You tell me. You pick. I'll take your answer. You're the smart one here. Someone saying some of us might have brain damage. We took some hits. Yeah. What makes you think I didn't? I had some pretty fucking degenerate years in there, brah. See, this is what I mean. Everyone's like, no, I'm different. I mean, yeah, you are, right? Like, no two human beings are the same, but y'all are making a lot of assumptions. I mean, I don't know if y'all know this. I was in a fraternity in college, okay? Like, that's nuts. Right? Someone else is saying, yeah, I've played League. Yeah, I've also played a lot of MOBAs. Like, you don't think there's trauma there? I don't know what's going on with my hair, but whatever. All right. I got some good stuff. You know, I got to say, the meditation works good, chat. The yoga helps. Just because you've done some damage to your brain. Like, the big difference is not the damage I've done. It's what I've done after the damage. Right? It's what you do after. It's what happens up here. Are we doing meditation today? Sure. Let's do meditation today. What kind of meditation do you want? I stared at a wall and went with a girl. What does that even mean? What's a fraternity for non-US folks? So there are social organizations when you attend a university that usually involve a lot of partying. So sometimes they make overtures at being professional and stuff. Actually, the one that I was a part of was like pretty good in that way. So it wasn't just about partying, but it's also like a bunch of dudes living together, partying a lot. Okay. Let's become an atom. All right. So I've never done this before, but let's give it a shot. So let's meditate and see what we can figure out. I'll work on this a little bit, but let's see if we can figure out something about becoming an atom. Who knows? Right? Because there we can, here's this thing that Dr. K is talking about. It's all up here. And it's like, oh, I don't know how to become an atom. Oh, I don't know how to become an atom. I don't know how to become an atom. Are we going to let it stop us from figuring it out? Let's figure it out together, chat. So we're going to sit in a position where our back is straight, our neck is straight, our head is straight. So for those of y'all that have been here for a while, we're also going to teach you one little trick to increase the straightness of your spine. So tip number 1 is try to keep your knees below your hips. If your knees are below your hips, it will be easier to straighten your spine. The second thing to understand is that the spine has a natural curvature, okay? So we have something called the lumbar region of our spine. We have something called lumbar lordosis, which is that the bottom of our spine kind of like bows out. I guess you can't. Let me do this. Here we go. Let's talk about. Oh, let's just look at a picture. Give me a second, chat. Okay, this is beautiful. Okay, let's look at the left lateral view of the spine from Netters. I was debating, should I just pull out the book? I think this is probably better. So if we look at this, we have the lumbar curvature. So this is the front of the person is facing this way, okay? This is the left lateral view. So we have a cervical curvature, and we have a thoracic curvature, and we have a lumbar curvature, and we have a sacral curvature. So what this means, this is your lower back. This is your lumbar region. So our belly is kind of sticking out. Our thoracic curvature of the spine means that our spine is a little bit bent inwards around the area of our heart so that we have space for all our organs like lungs and stuff. And then we have a curvature of the spine like this, okay? So one thing that you can actually do is tilt your head slightly back. And while that may feel like it's increasing the cervical curvature, if you look at some of these yogic texts and stuff, it may straighten out your thoracic spine some by actually tilting back a little bit, okay? So if we want to keep a super straight spine, what we want to do is have our legs, or have our knees lower than our hips, and we can add a slight curvature. You look sort of kind of, you don't want to go too far back, but you can tip your chin up just a little bit, okay? And now what we're going to do is go ahead and round out your shoulders, tip your head back a little bit. Let your spine be straight, your neck be straight, head be straight. And take a few moments to just notice your breathing. I want you to settle down into the position. And now what I want you to do is observe the space outside of you. And this may seem kind of weird, but what I want y'all to do is notice that you can feel the emptiness. So feel yourself surrounded by the emptiness. There's an experience of space. And notice that. And now what I want y'all to do is pull back a little bit. Now I want you to notice that right at the edge of your skin, there's almost a cushion of warmth that extends immediately past the physical boundary of your body. So it can almost feel like a mist or a cushion or air It can feel a little bit warm, a little bit tingly. So notice that there's this space outside, and then there's this cushion of warmth right around the edge of your body. And now I want you to notice the boundary of your physical form. Notice all the places that you're sitting and you have contact. And so your body is sending you signals. And now we're going to go within. So I want you to focus on the inside of your shoulders, your arms. And notice a warmth there. You can feel the presence of yourself in the middle of your arms and your shoulders. Once again, a warmth. Almost feels the same as the stuff on the outside. And now we're going to pay attention to not warmth, but coolness. The coolness in our nose, a column of cold in the middle of our throat that extends down into our torso and possibly abdomen. So follow that channel, almost like flowing water. Now, if you can feel the warmth and you can feel the coldness, what you'll notice is that there's a point or a layer where the two touch. Because the sensation of cold doesn't suffuse your entire body, usually. If it does, that's cool too. But notice that the warmth is in one place and the coolness is in another place. And now comes the hard part. So once you find the barrier, notice that the warmth must originate from somewhere because we know where the coolness comes from. And now track the warmth back to a point. And settle on that, on your atomic nature. The point of origin of your warmth. And now comes the final part of the meditation. Which is that we're going to come back, we're going to open our eyes, but our attention will remain on that singular point of warmth, the origin. And we're going to try to hold our attention there even as we return to the world. And as we make that transition, we're going to remember it where it is. Now come back. And now you can let go of it and see if you can find it again. Bounce away and come back. Okay. Now, so, okay. Now let's talk about meditation. So the first thing is, why don't you tell us whether you could feel anything? So let's do a poll. Okay. What feel? Nothing. No clue, bruh. Point. So navel, heart, crown, other. So let's start this. Okay, so let's see what people felt. And then let's see if we can do that on the YouTube side. Give me a second, chat. Then we're going to learn a lot of weird stuff now, okay? A lot of weird stuff. So get ready, chat. How do I... Oh, boy. Okay, let's see if... I don't have access to the YouTube stuff, so hopefully we have YouTube mods. Okay. All right. So, 20% of people didn't feel anything. 38% of people felt something at the heart. 28% of people felt something somewhere else. So let's talk about this. So the first is that not all kinds of meditation will resonate with all kinds of people. The second is that depending on your practice at meditation and how aware you are of subtle sensations, you will be able to detect or not detect. Okay? So it's okay. Not all meditations for all people. You don't necessarily need to go searching for it. If you're not experienced in meditation, I would say practice meditation for about 90 days, meditating at least once a day. No days off, by the way. And then come back and do this meditation. Okay? Second thing is people feel things in weird places. So let's start with the weirdest thing that we feel. So type 1 in chat if you felt something outside of yourself. 2 if you did not feel anything outside of yourself. Okay? All right. So I'm kind of getting a lot of 50-50s, but a lot of people are feeling things outside of themselves. So this is the first really weird thing. Okay? I felt surrounded. Is that a 1? Yeah, that's a 1. If you feel surrounded and you have no parts of your body there, that's a 1. Okay? So this is weird. Because we have no sensory, we have no nerves there. We have no nerves outside of ourselves. Right? So how do we feel things outside of ourselves? So let's understand the science of it. The first is we have this thing called a somatosensory cortex. And sometimes the somatosensory cortex, which interprets our proprioception, which is our ability to feel where we exist in space. So if I hold my hand up like this, even if I'm not looking, I can feel that my hand is up. So the first thing is that this could be an illusion of the somatosensory cortex, which we know happens. So if we look at things like phantom limb syndrome, we can remove a part of your body and your somatosensory cortex is like, ow, it hurts. So we actually have scientific evidence of sensory experiences where we have no physical substance. So if we're taking a hard biological reductionist route, we say this is just an illusion of the mind. Even then, I'll take it because it feels good. Even if we take a hard biological reductionist approach, we know that for some reason, chilling in that space activates our hypothalamus to reduce our secretion of ACTH, which then reduces our secretion of CRH, which then reduces our cortisol secretion. Great. Still a win, even if it's all in our mind. A Phantom in the Brain. Fantastic book, by the way. The alternate thing is that we have a perception of shit that doesn't exist. And this is what's super cool. See, in science, we don't know how to explore that. We don't think it's worth exploring because it's a sensation that has no physical whatever. But through the practice of meditation, we can explore the realm of the non-physical. So we can feel a vastness. We can feel a cushion. We can feel some kind of warmth. Just feel it. That's all. And you will go later. It'll go. So if you go in that direction, we will feel ourselves connected with the universe. Now, what does that mean, connected with the universe? That means you will have a subjective, sensory experience of existence around you. Do you all understand that? Could be a phantom in the brain. But right now, you feel this. And if you practice this, you will feel that. Now, this is kind of interesting because this has benefits. This we know scientifically. This is what's fun about this. Half of this is complete BS from a scientific perspective, but half of it is like pretty legit. So if you look at, let me see if I can find this paper. Let's see if I can, oh, not images. Okay. Hold on, let me see this. Okay, so this is not the paper I'm looking for, but we can show it anyway. So this is a paper called, from the Neuroscience of Consciousness, called Self-Unbound Ego Dissolution in Psychedelic Experience. So, this is not the paper that I'm looking for, but it's still a cool one, it seems like. I think I've read it before. There's another one. Let's try this. Here we go. Ah, this is it. Oh, it looks like there's a couple. Okay. So, so depression and anxiety are often correlated to self-rumination and a heightened sense of self, and making sufferers unable to withdraw from repetitive, negative, self-referenced thought patterns. Okay? So when our mind is constantly thinking about ourselves in a negative way, it correlates with depression and anxiety. Some researchers hypothesize that the therapeutic effects of psychedelics come from their acute, subjective effects, specifically ego dissolution. By reviewing 5 studies that examine this correlation, this review found that the majority of studies could present a moderate correlation. This suggests a negative correlation between the degree of ego dissolution and therapeutic improvements in disorders with a heightened sense of self. So what this means is that we now have some studies that show that psychedelics can potentially be helpful. I still do not recommend for y'all to go and use them. There's also cases of psychedelic-induced PTSD and anxiety disorders. But now what's pretty cool is we're studying this stuff. And as we study it, we're trying to figure out, hold on a second. Totally fine. Psychedelics induce improvements in depression or anxiety. But how? What is going on? Like, how is this possible? And what we discover is that in the psychedelic experiences where people are just like hallucinating and stuff, there's very poor clinical outcomes. The good outcomes come when there's ego death. So once you have a connected experience to the universe around you, this becomes less important. There's also other kinds of things that come from this. Because when you have a connected experience to the world around you, what you also discover is the world is chillin'. So do this practice for 40 days in the morning and in the evening. Do a mandala. And just feel what the rest of the universe is like. And it's straight chillin'. Something cool happens. Once you realize that the universe at its base is straight chillin', insecurity will get better. Because the opinions of others are all localized to this person. This person is not everything else. The universe is just chilling. I can just chill too. Right? And so what we know also, the mechanism, insecurity, remember, insecurity is about ego, is about the sense of self, is about the barrier of you. And now we have a mechanism, we have an experience. We don't need psychedelics. Meditation is good enough. We can abandon the ego, abandon those ruminating thoughts about myself, whether I'm short, whether I'm pathetic, whether I'm bald, all it's the same thing, all same crap. This is what's cool about the yogis. The yogis were like, let's not fix a particular problem in the mind. Let's just bypass mind entirely. Who cares about how... See, this really confused me when I was studying meditation and Eastern medicine and stuff like that. I was like, where's all the psychiatry? Where's all the depression do this, anxiety do this, anger do this? They don't have any of that. I was like, what's different between depression? That's because the yogis like transcend mind entirely. All of those things are bound within the mind. You just move past the mind, you'll move past all of it. And this is why meditation is an evidence-based, clinically effective treatment for any mental illness: narcissism, bipolar disorder, depression, schizophrenia. Transcend mind and everything will get better. So that's experience number one and how we can understand it. Connect with the outside world. Experience number two, if you felt coldness, suffuse the warmth, and warmth suffuse the coldness. If you felt a blending of that, we didn't walk you through that. Study this and you will discover yin and yang. So for those of you, I said find the layer between warmth and coldness. If it was like this, study that and you will discover yin and yang. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. For the rest of us, if you didn't feel anything, just try again in 90 days. For the rest of us who felt what we described and you felt a point of something, focus on that point. Focus on that origin of warmth. Focus on that nidus of self. And really see, where does this go? Where does the warmth suffuse? Does it go all the way outside me? Explore, explore, explore. This is real meditation. It's not mindlessly doing something, or even mindfulness. I don't think this is like that. So the kind of meditation that I like and oftentimes teach is this weird esoteric stuff. And this isn't even super esoteric. This isn't like tantra and stuff. But there's all these weird things that people talk about in meditation. Like, I'm one with the universe. Oh my God. Like, we are all one with the universe. Let's all circle jerk. Come on. Let's go. I'm one with the universe. This is not an intellectual concept. This is an experiential concept. Oneness with the universe is not something to be found in song lyrics, although in song lyrics and poetry, we get closer to it than in prose and in science. This is an experience. I can feel something outside of me. I can feel the universe. Now, if we ask Dr. Ramachandran, author of Phantoms in the Brain, Dr. Ramachandran may say, this is the somatosensory cortex creating an illusion of experience. Now this becomes kind of interesting. So if we have activity of the somatosensory cortex, how do we know that activity of the somatosensory cortex is an illusory activity as opposed to interpreting a signal from something legitimate out there? We don't really know that. There's some studies that suggest that we may know that, and we can tell the difference between apples and oranges. But just think about it, right? So the somatosensory cortex receives nervous input via the thalamus. Fair enough. But something is causing it to activate. It could be detecting something. We just can't detect what it is detecting, so we assume that it doesn't exist, which is like a reasonable view, I think. So focus on either the outside world or the atomic nature of yourself. Now, will this give you the siddhi that Yogi Patanjali talks about? Who the fuck knows? Certainly not me. Could it? Y'all tell me. Do this practice for a while. See what happens. Maybe you can grow a foot taller. Report back, chat. Do kirtans get close to this? Sure, in some ways. But in other ways, no. You can achieve this through kirtan. But they don't go the same route. Kirtans is like they have it easy. Kirtans, you go where the kirtan takes you. This is where we decide where to go. All right? I'm going to be 9 feet tall. Hey, report back, chat. See, of all the impossibility of the things that I tell you all to do, if you're bald, if you're short, I think we can fix that. Can you grow a foot? I don't know, chat. I don't know. I wish I could say I believe, but I don't know. But that's for you to figure out. Right? You figure it out. I've given y'all enough answers. The rest of it is you. All right, chat. I gotta run. I got something in a little while. So it's been awesome being here today. Thank you all so much for coming today. This is May 1st. We're launching Mental Health May of 2024 here at Healthy Gamer. We got a lot of great stuff planned for y'all. Be sure you check out Make It, which is our community event. Week 1 is going to be planning. I think we'll have Trauma Guide coming out later this month, made with a lot of love, a lot of effort from our whole team. And we'll see y'all on Friday when I think we're going to be talking about dating. So love y'all, bro. And ladies and everything in between.